Uh, When Dr. Ann Schultz of the CDC testified before this subcommittee on September 24th, I asked her about whether non-smokers are being drawn to e-cigarettes by their flavors, and she said that among our young people, quote, flavors are pretty much always what brings youth into starting use of e-cigarettes. She also testified that for a flavor ban to be effective at keeping kids off cigarettes, all flavors, including menthol, must be included. Mr. Zeller, do you agree with Dr. Schuckert's assessment that in order to be effective, a flavor ban must include menthol?
Again, I think much to the consternation of this subcommittee, I can't get into the specifics of the policy that's under consideration. All I can tell you
I wasn't asking about the specifics of the policy under consideration. I'm asking your opinion. If you agree with Dr. Schuckert's assessment that in order to be effective, a flavor ban must include menthol, you're not prohibited in any way, shape, or form from offering your opinion.
As I said in an earlier response, one of the things that we're trying to account for is the data that came out in the Monitoring the Future survey that only came out recently. And I'll just repeat it very, very briefly.
Please briefly, because I am familiar, I was here when you said it, and I don't need it repeated.
Okay, then I won't repeat it, and I'll just cut to the chase and say, we now have data that shows that for kids who use Juul, they're far more likely to use mint than menthol, far more likely. And how do we account for that as we're trying to make the right policy here to do the best job of protecting kids?
So reclaiming my time, did the idea of exempting menthol from a potential ban on e-cigarette flavors originate from the FDA? That's an awfully long pause.
The issue of what the scope of the policy should be, what it should include, was the subject and remains the subject of ongoing discussions.
Did the idea of exempting menthol from a potential ban on e-cigarette flavors originate from the FDA, or did it come from somewhere else?
FDA put the science forward that I just described to you.
That's not what I'm asking you. The idea to exempt menthol, was it an idea that was generated by the FDA? Yes or no?
Let me try to answer your question in a more general and hypothetical way.
I have other questions for you, and I want an answer. It's not a trick question. Did the idea to exempt menthol from a flavor ban come from the FDA, or did it come from somewhere else?
There have been a variety of options for the scope of this policy that have been under discussion.
You're talking about options. I'm asking the idea.
Please let me finish.
I'm trying to get a yes or no question, and you are obfuscating.
The options that FDA put on the table for consideration, going to what the scope of this guidance should be, went to the issue of menthol in or menthol out. We put
But is that
options.
where did the idea
If the answer to your question is who put the options on the table, menthol in or menthol out, then the answer is yes, we put it on the table.
So it didn't come from somewhere else. It wasn't an idea brought to you from the outside. It was generated by the FDA. It was your idea with no.
At a point in time when all options were being explored.
Okay. So there was influence from the outside, and it was not, you are not answering that this was an idea that was exclusively generated by the FDA.
I don't think that's what I said.
Okay.
When we were,
I want to make sure I understand what you are saying.
when we were identifying options, we put a variety of options on the table for consideration that included menthol in or menthol out.
Reclaiming my time. Mr. Chairman, we are really going to have to make sure that the FDA understands what they are required to answer when we ask them questions, because Mr. Zeller is not complying with what's required of him. Do you have any reason to, on November 13th, Dr. Schuckert testified that the National Youth Tobacco Survey didn't differentiate between menthol or mint, and we don't even know if kids can differentiate menthol or mint. Do you have any reason to believe that kids can differentiate between menthol and mint flavors?
I'm aware of the literature that says kids may not be able to differentiate between menthol and mint.
And menthol and mint e-cigarettes, we know, may carry additional unique harms. Pedrulogone is a cancer-causing agent present in mint plant oil. Mr. Zeller, the FDA banned it as a food additive last year, didn't it?
Yes, it did.
And a recent study from Duke University School of Medicine found extremely high levels of patchoulagone in both menthol and mint e-liquids. It found the level inhaled by menthol and mint e-cigarette users is as much as 1,000 times higher than menthol cigarette users. Shouldn't we be concerned about that?
We've been looking into that science. We have questions about the study that was done, but we're aware of it,
You
and we're
banned it
looking
as
at
a food additive last year, so I would think that you already have pretty good science that it's dangerous, correct?
We're looking into the methodology and the adequacy of that
That
science.
study came out on September 16th. We've heard that a decision to exempt menthol may have been made by October 31st. Were you aware of this study on October 31st when you made that decision?
Not going to refer to any decision, but we were aware of that study by October 31st, yes.
When you are considering pulling flavors and a revelation comes to light about dramatically high levels of a cancer-causing agent in menthol e-liquids, wouldn't that be a good reason to pull them from the market to determine if they are safe?
It would be part of the consideration that we would make about what the scope of the guidance should be.
I yield back the balance of my time. Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman.